Hello, everybody. Very happy to be back in Ljubljana, your beautiful city, your wonderful country. What they have asked me is impossible. I cannot talk 1 hour and make a definition of what quality in children's film, children's media. I would try to make it bigger. What it is impossible. What I can share with you quickly is the process that I went through, the discoveries that I did, the research that I found, and the productions that I created and produced around the world, and the effect it had on children. And again, on my work and on new creations. So I'm planning to show you a lot of works, and I've, especially for today, I made a little list of what quality should be. Anyway, this is what I discovered in the more than 40 countries where I worked, where I produced, where I lectured around the world, that the quality of children's media in a country reflects the quality of that country. Take, for example, the USA. There are no, or hardly no, independent productions for children in the USA. So there's not a creative industry. There's a marketing industry. Well, that is how that country works. I don't know if you have been fascinating watching live last night the Facebook hearings. That was fascinating. So it shows how that country thinks about children. So imagine now your own country. I won't say anything. I've decided to focus on fiction because I'm creating and producing films, feature films, short films, drama, documentary, youth documentaries, preschool, youth, teens, tweens. To make it in this 1 hour as compact as possible, I'll focus on fiction. I have to change my slides, I'm sorry. There we are. Okay, first, short about me, because what I'm going to tell you is very personal. Me, I was a child. This is just shortly. I started as a director and scriptwriter. I was creator of over 125 program series and films, besides dozens of co-productions international. I ran channels, and currently I am the head of children and youth media of a Dutch NGO. And one of my major projects is Wadada News for Kids, an international network of dedicated news programs for young people outside of Europe, in 20 countries worldwide. And I am working with my own foundation that gives me the possibility to be in places like this, to share experiences and to be inspired by you. If you want to know more, I'm on IMDb, of course. These are the countries that I've traveled and worked, where I worked on children's media, lectured, and as you know, I'm from the orange country, so I'm trying to color the world orange. The great thing is that I discovered that it's really serious and important what we're doing, even though in the way they finance us, we have some questions. But for instance, you can make headlines, like in Slovenia. This was last year at the Victor Awards. You can meet royalties, like the Crown Prince of Japan, if you win the Japan Prize, as lucky as I was. But I don't want to show off. Here are some posters of works that I did as a creator or as a co-creator, as a producer or co-producer, as a writer or co-writer. Like I said, from feature film to 1-minute pieces. And for me, there's no difference in working in a $1 million budget feature film or a little €1,500 short piece for preschoolers. No difference. It should have the same energy, passion, and that because for the audience it doesn't matter. They put the television on, or they go to a cinema, or they go online, and they expect the best of the best. It's just to define what is the best of the best. Well, let's debate that. I'm even though I worked for public TV or I work now for an NGO, and besides that, I do a lot of work independent, I was always interested in media for change. To make media that have an impact, that you will never forget, to reach for the highest. Because in our daily life, as a producer, as a creator, you're always bothered by output. You have to make a film and it has to be in cinema then, or you have 26 episodes and it has to be delivered then. You're so focused on output that the content, the quality, becomes secondary. It's unfortunately a reality. Because there's a lot of money involved, so there's a lot of pressure. But you know, output without quality, without content, is at the end nothing. That's why, at least what I want to try to achieve is outcome. Which means that you show something and the person that has watched it embraces it and it creates a change. For instance, you make a film because your passion is to help children, to tell a great engaging story, but also to help them to be more safe on the street. And after your film, a child decides, okay, when I go on the bike, I put on a helmet, or anyway, it changes something in its life that makes it more safe. That's an outcome. That's a great outcome, if you manage to do that. Or when you stimulate creativity and the child decides, no, I'm not going to work in a bank, I'm going to be the next contemporary art artist of Ljubljana. That is what you can achieve with media, with film, for instance. That's an outcome. But if you manage to change society by your film, by your television, that's impact. And we should reach for the highest. Why not? And I came to this when I saw a film that had such an impact on my life. I was a late teenager, maybe 19, 20 years old, and I had a chance to watch an old movie, Hiroshima, Mon Amour. And when I saw it, it had such an impact that is following me the rest of my life. I want just to share a clip.
Tu n'as rien vu à Hiroshima, rien.
J'ai tout vu, tout.
Tu as tout inventé.
Rien. De même que dans l'amour, cette illusion existe, cette illusion de pouvoir ne jamais oublier. De même, j'ai eu l'illusion devant Hiroshima que jamais je n'oublierai. De même que dans l'amour. Écoute, je sais tout. Ça a continué.
Rien. Tu ne sais rien.
Écoute-moi. Comme toi, moi aussi, j'ai essayé de lutter de toutes mes forces contre l'oubli. Comme toi, j'ai oublié. Pourquoi nier l'évidente nécessité de la mémoire? Je te rencontre, je me souviens de toi. Qui es-tu? Tu me tues, tu me fais du bien. Comment me serais-je douté que cette ville était faite à la taille de l'amour? Comment me serais-je douté que tu étais fait à la taille de mon corps même? Tu me plais.
I never, as a child, saw something else than mainstream in cinema. Because in my childhood, there was hardly any movies made for children at all. So when I saw this, I was completely struck by it. I'm still puzzling what the movie is about, by the way, which is great. So I'm interacting with the movie after seeing it once. It took me more than 15 years before I dared to watch it the second time. I was so afraid that it would destroy my memories, but it was even better, because I was 15 years older. So taking that in your mind, this is what also happens with other kids, with you. And this is also what you can change already in when they're a child. When I would have been a child and have seen things on this level, on this aspirational level, poetry, literature, visual art, everything is there, great dialogues, stories, characters, you can really make an outcome or maybe even an impact, as this has on me. So for me, everything I do for any target group, especially for kids, especially for preschoolers, I want to reach this. So I'm puzzling my mind how to translate this into stories, into media for them. And anything I produce, I want to at least have this aspirational level. I will never reach this level, but at least try. So the first thing you have to ask yourself if you're going to produce and create is, what are children? Because we are here with, let's say, 100 people, I don't know, more. It's not that we all think the same about children. Often I work, I give some support to several channels around the world, or some filmmakers, and I say, well, when you work together in a team, you never discuss children, because you take it for granted. But there's so many philosophies and visions on children, how they are. For instance, you can say on one hand, you have the hollow barrel theory here. Children are hollow barrels, and we have to put our knowledge and skills in it. Children are hollow barrels, we have to put our knowledge and skills in it. Or you go to the other extreme, they're autonomous. We just create a safe environment. Where are you? Where is your team? Where's the people you work with? You're a director? Where's your cameraman or woman? Your sound person? The catering? All these elements have an influence. So try to think about it and take a decision on it. So you have to think, what are children? To make a definition for yourself, what you believe in. Then, when you see something, for instance, when it has children, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's for children. It could be about children. There's a big misunderstanding in many films that I see, many television programs that I see. There are kids, but basically so constructed by the adult that it's not really for children. It's more about children. Even many awarded programs that think that they awarded the program for children. So it's not that easy. I was very lucky that, first of all, that I got children myself, and that I had a eureka moment. A moment that for me, later I realized that is what it's all about. And it was the day that my son dismounted our dishwasher. Because he was 5, and and my kids, my daughter and my son, they were always interested in my tools. Because what do we do with kids? We give them plastic tools and wooden tools, and they don't work. The first thing a child does when you give them a plastic or wooden tool, they go to a screw. It doesn't work. That's evil. That's evil. They want to participate in society, and we separate them. We even call television programs junior. Are we crazy? They're here. So, dishwasher broke, here are my tools, go ahead, and this has happened. Well, you know, I'm almost 2 meters, to be precise, 195. I had a lightweight shoulder camera, Super VHS, lightweight. I was standing on top of that thing, filming, and they don't notice me. So there's something in their concentration, in their story, that excludes me, any distraction. And you see the concentration, the passion, even they are, moving each other aside, they're so into this. So this is definitely on their level, even though nobody does it and nobody dares to give them the tools. Okay, he has a little plaster on his finger, it's like life. Life is falling and standing up again. What it taught me, mostly, is that believe in their autonomy. That's the key point. If you believe in their autonomy, they will grow, and they will get into their stories, and they will surprise the world. And it's all about character, personality. So if you create programs, films, we need characters. We need the personalities. As one of the scriptwriters of Nemo said, how we call that? Now I forgot the word. Temperament. Show characters with temperament. Sometimes we misuse that word, but it's personality. Because the more character you see on TV or in a film, the more you're engaged with, because the more drama there is, the more exciting it is to watch. So these bases, for me, became my concept, my philosophy that is called Children in the Center, that I used this expression for the first time in 1999. Now it's quite common to say we have to put children in the center, but it's not that easy. Because often putting children in the center means you are putting the child in the center under your control, under your rules. Putting children really in the center, really believing in their autonomy, is something more. It's not Sesame Street. It's something more. It's not Disney. It's something more. It's really believing in them, investing in them. Well, to finish my personal search is, I came up with my concept, Children in the Center, and this is what everybody in my team has to know and has to work with. From catering to executive producer, from sound to whatever. Believe in the autonomy of children, focus on their power and talent, because especially many television programs, I already mentioned Sesame Street, are about red. How do you feel when somebody speaks like that to you, and it happens to you at school, at home, even on the street? You don't feel very confident. So, believing in the autonomy, focus on their power and talent, the way they do it. And besides, show the beauty of everyday life. They don't have to become the voice of Slovenia, or the junior voice of Slovenia, worse. Or America's Next Top Model. The beauty of everyday life. Well, besides, I've been looking very deeply in myself, which values that I stand for, that I could support them with. And it became those 5: family, your comfort, and your pain in the ass. So I prefer to show a lot of pain in the ass situations. That makes them grow and recognize the reality. Friendship and cooperation, without that you don't get far. And I'm not saying that, I'm visualizing that implicitly. Spirituality, there might be more before being born, might be more after death. Or why do I cry when I see a picture and the other one doesn't? Something to explore. Preschoolers, for instance, are very interested in that area. Learning and skills, by putting some more focus on how they go through a process, how they develop their skills or use the skills that they have. It's so fascinating for kids to watch that. I mean, I'm talking from the perspective of children that are watching it. And expressing the right to be yourself. Because that's the biggest misunderstanding between adults and children. We want something from them. We want them to like our politician. We want them to vote on the same party. We want them to be fan of the same football club. We want them even to have the same profession, or at least a proper job. Imagine that pressure. Does that mean that you develop the maximum talent? I'm not sure. So this became, and besides the right to be yourself is not written in the United Nations Declaration of Children's Rights. So since 1990 something, I'm traveling around the world pleading to have that inside the declaration. Okay, so that is, this is, I also wanted to have that in one slide, because policies are usually 150 pages, so everybody gets confused and nothing happens. This is clear. This you can really, every day when I worked, worked in public TV, every day I was in office and I might say in the corridor, okay, the 5 values. And they didn't know. Or I came with the first cut of a film and I showed it to some of my staff, and they would have said, no, but how can you do that? This is dangerous, or it's, parents will... I'm not for the parents. I'm only for the kids. Children in the center means forget the parents, forget the teachers, forget the politicians, the child. What can we do to really help the child? And that's much more than we do now. And what children really like, and that's because they're bothered by us all the time, by rules, by limitations, is anarchy. They want you to play with anarchy. They want you to break rules so they can understand the rules. Because you can only obey rules if you understand them. You can only understand them when you break them. So there's the area where it's getting exciting for them. We have an iconic figure, Pippi Longstockings. Which boy or girl, that's also clever, any boy or girl would love to live on his own in a villa with a horse and a monkey and with a big bag full of money and being so strong that you can just throw a villain in the tree. Every child dreams about that. You dreamt about that. Maybe not exactly the same, but you dreamt about that. So we can help kids to fulfill those dreams by really focusing on their power and talent, by believing in their autonomy. Why anarchy is important to discover and to work with and to understand shows this commercial from Japan. It's called The Whale.
みんなの心に浮かんだことをそのまま書けばいいんだからね。
何書いたの？ね、教えてくれるかな。
緑色の空に向かってピンピンと突き立った鳥の
Well, that's what it's all about. It's so easy not to understand a child. It needed 10 adults, or maybe that one person, to really find what a child is meaning, what the child is thinking about. So that is what we can do with film, and I'm talking media in general. Of course, it's also important to know there are many researches and theories and discoveries. For instance, Professor Matti Bergström was quite controversial in what he said, but it's interesting. Creativity is the storm between the right part and the left part of our brain. That's our third brain, the brain of a child. Nowadays in neurology, we believe that it's not so specifically right and left anymore, but it doesn't matter. Think of the idea that we can create storms, that we can address them on both sides instead of isolating knowledge and entertainment. Create storms. It's a great thing we can do with film. Maria Montessori, the environment must be rich in motives, which lead interest to activity, and invite the child to conduct his own experiences. This also is a message to filmmaking, not only for schools that she established. Loris Malaguzzi. A child has 100 languages, 100 hands, 100 thoughts, 100 ways of thinking, of playing, of speaking. So when you make a film, you're not addressing one child, one stereotype, one archetype. You're addressing individuals. That's the reason why Disney doesn't want to take any risk. So if you go into cinema a little later of a Disney movie, you see everybody has the same emotion at the same moment. It's completely conducted by Disney. Now you're all sad. And now you're all happy. And now you all cry. Completely controlled. Is that quality? Yeah, that's a quality. I mean, it's also very clever to do that. But it's not respecting what Malaguzzi says here so beautifully. Or Janusz Korczak. 100 children, 100 individuals who are people. Not people to be, not people of tomorrow, but people of right now today. So forget about Song Contest Junior. It's right now, it's today. Okay, this is a short introduction. So I had to start producing after all this research and knowledge and experiences and making my concept. So I decided the first thing to create with this new concept that I created late 90s, early 2000s, preschool documentaries. Because I wanted to have every day a new preschool documentary on TV. Because they didn't exist. There were little clips with preschool kids, but they were not really stories, not really... I had the impression that they were not really made with the perspective that I just, as I painted it. So it took 1 year to find out, what does a preschool documentary need? And after 1 year, producing in different regions of the Netherlands with different directors, we tried 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8-year-olds. We tried 1 minute to 10 minutes. At the end, we found out it has to be exactly 2.5 minutes, and it has to be with a 5-year-old. So I created 10 rules, because I knew for the next decades we will produce these preschool documentaries. I want to work with many great talented directors and producers around the world and in my country. But they need to work within a frame, because it has to be a series. There has to be some sort of continuity. And within the continuity, there has to be great creative challenges. So these are 10 rules that I created. I'm not going to go too much into detail of it. But these learning experiences, basically, the basis of this, I also use in any film that I produce. Because it really goes on the basics that, especially preschool children, can get engaged with. So here's one famous example. Oh, preschool, sorry, I cannot. It says preschool doc, but it's preschool doc. Reika makes sushi.
Reika makes sushi.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, this is just one of over 1,000, 1,500, I don't know. And it's definitely not the best one, but it's a very clear one because it shows that we found a story of a 5-year-old girl from Japanese background in Amsterdam who can make sushi. And she can make the best sushi from the perspective of a 5-year-old. I mean, you laugh, and it's nothing against it because you're adults, you laugh because you have an adult context. But how would kids watch this? That's also interesting. Well, the great thing is that many of my programs and films are researched. And so I'm going to show you a clip from an independent research organization in Germany, ITSI. And they have observed German children watching Reika make sushi.
Reika maakt sushi. Was hat sie gerade gesagt? Reika maakt sushi. Sushi soll das heißen, nicht Sushi. Was hat sie gerade gesagt? Dass Kaka gerne Sushi macht. Kaka Sushi. Macht selber Sushi. Ein bisschen darf ich jetzt gar nicht in die Hand nehmen. Ein Buch so klein wie jeder auch nicht. Okay. Das ist was Mayonnaise. Ja, das braucht man halt für Sushi. Die will in Schuhbastel. Aus einer Gurke. Nein, die macht Sushi. Sushi. Ja. Nee, wir haben keine Schuhe. Hier extra hochgeschnitten. Sie macht es, bringt es jemanden. Sie bringt es jemanden. Aber das darf man nicht.
So don't worry, kids know. Don't underestimate kids. Because of course when I started with these preschool documentaries, and especially if this was one of the first 25 or something, I got emails from parents complaining that now every child in the Netherlands wants to take a knife and will hurt themselves and die. This was 2003 or 4. I think it has been on television more than 500 times. Don't worry, nothing happened. I think the opposite happens. They see this and they're engaged. They see what they can do, what they can learn. They see that they matter, and that is what you can achieve. That is the outcome that you can have with a film like this. And kids understand the language when you do your best to bring it in their language and not in your own. And you can still seduce them to new areas. For instance, the title. I never knew that a title is so important. It's so important. They discuss it the whole program. And it's the basic idea of these titles are main character, verb, subject. Reika makes sushi. Lara walks the dogs. Things like that. And for kids, it's so important. That little title, little simple element, so underestimated. And of course, I got reactions around the world of endangering children and molesting children and whatever. So I was very happy that 10 years later, Time in the USA discovered it and said what the US can learn from European children's TV. So now suddenly I'm representing European children's TV. Anyway, because I don't think that the BBC will broadcast this, and some people in Sesame Street definitely got a heart attack. Because we are all brainwashed. We're all brainwashed by Disney, by Sesame Street, that everything has to be perfect. You have to avoid dangerous things. Kids don't understand. You have to show them clearly. Yes, the last part I can follow to a certain extent. But of course, it's not true. Of course, it's all fear. And that is what, especially in television, happens. We make a lot of things based on fear, or there's a lot of things made based on fear. And that never leads to creativity, that never leads to outcome. What I learned from the preschool documentaries is be true. Be true to children. Don't give them a plastic knife and make sushi. It's impossible to make sushi with a plastic knife. Be true in that she can do it. And this is the result that she makes. I mean, if this would be, say it again, I don't want to insult anyone of Sesame Street, except that I don't believe in what they're doing. But they did a great job in earlier decades. If this would be a Sesame Street film, and I mention it because it's a standard in the world, the knife would be put out, there would be a parent doing it and the child watching it, or maybe giving something to the parent or the adult. And at the end, they would replace her sushi to a sushi made by a real sushi chef. It has to be perfection. Which perfection? Whose perfection? You saw how the preschool children completely were engaged with the child because autonomy, anarchy, it was there, and they appreciated it because this is what they feel inside. So be true. Don't polish things. Be true. Make it real. Make it real. And that will be my message for especially for here today. Yesterday, after meeting some people here, I completely changed my presentation. That's why I have too many minutes of video to show you, so I have to cut some. But at least I thought of, okay, I will leave a list of things that you really have to put in to make quality, which is visual storytelling. Please make your first cut without any music, whatever you produce. Visual storytelling. If it doesn't work in the images, it's not interesting for kids, especially for kids. I mean, same thing for adults, of course. Imagination, which is something else than fantasy. Imagination brings kids to a situation that they can see the imagination of another or start imagination by themselves on what they see. Don't be afraid of cruelty. I will explain later a little bit more, but your main character in a drama has to suffer. Be cruel. Be cruel, for instance, in the editing. I will show you examples of that. By the way, you will be frustrated today because I'm going to show you scenes of that cruelty, and you will not see that it ends positively. That's why I will leave at the end some links where you can watch the things that I'm showing here today full. So cruelty is something that, for instance, works very well in action movies. Well, in a drama context, it works very good. I will show you how you do it with kids. I mean, it's not... That's also about film theory. We heard some more this morning about film theory. That's not film theory for children. For children, you have to be on other levels sometimes. You cannot copy it one-on-one, but there is a lot of similarities, much more than we might think. But you see the different appreciation of Raika Make Sushi by the kids themselves than by you. It's another context that you're looking at it. Okay, coming back. Make it rich of culture or cultures. So if you show a culture, show that culture in richness. Not take it for granted. Or make it rich in different cultures, connecting cultures. Create interaction. Interesting, of course, we will talk about it tomorrow. Can you make interaction also physically in cinema? Interesting. But interaction at least mentally. an interaction in a way that the audience is invited to have its own experience, instead of having one audience having the same experience. Aesthetics, that is really something underestimated in film for kids, in television for children. And there you can change, there you can have outcome and impact. There you can make them demand for the best in their society, instead of taking for granted that they live in ugly streets, for instance. Aesthetics. Okay, so I will show you examples and refer to this little list. I'm not going to show this example connects with that quote, because usually all of these things I mix. The first I want to show you is an episode of a preschool fiction series that we made for television and for children's film festivals. Drama, actually, films today for children you cannot produce without television. You need the broadcast guarantee, you need money from the broadcaster in most of the countries. In some countries even there will be no drama at all when television doesn't pay for it. That's why it is also a chance to make television more a cinema feel. I always see things from the positive side. So here's an example of how cinema enters in a daily preschool fiction series. Can I have the lights?
Wat schrijf je nou toch weer? Dingen die ik cool vind zien, spannend en leuk. Dat is weer over Seb die altijd poep roept. Over Simon die danst in de wei. Over mam op de tractor en pap in de stal. Waarom schrijf je niet over mij? Ik vertel je toch niks meer, je leest het later wel een keer. Ik ben Saar en ik ben schrijfster. Dat komt omdat ik van vertellen hou. Ik schrijf over van alles. Over onze boerderij en over de dieren. Over mijn familie. Maar vooral over mijn zusjes zien. Saar, ze gaan. Kom je? Omdat ze altijd gekke dingen doet en veel avonturen beleeft.
Lig in mijn bureautje, goed? Dat is tegen papa zeggen. Kom jij eens even hier. Ga jij extra goed op oma passen? Oké. Ja, schatje. Dag mama. Dag tijger.
Vandaag gaan pap en mam naar een bruiloft.
Dag! Doei!
Hopla, nog een keertje. Zo, kijk eens, prachtig. Zo. Woep. Eens kijken. Oh, goed zo. Kijk eens, jongens, wat Sepp een mooie poep heeft gedaan. Oh.
Oma doet nou wel vrolijk, maar het is vandaag ook 3 jaar geleden dat opa doodging. En daar moet oma steeds aan denken. Oma heeft een kapsalon, maar je eigen haar kan je niet knippen. Vroeger deed opa oma's haar. Heel mooi zat het dan.
Zit ook van geen kant.
Arme oma. Simon! Simon!
Sien, wat is dit nou weer? Kom eens.
Vind je het mooi? Wat denk je zelf zien?
Ga je niet mee naar Seb? Waar is mijn haar? Wie heeft dat gedaan? Sien van Sellingen.
Misschien moet je je haar eens wassen, oma.
Wacht eens even, jongens. Sien? Sien? Simon, weet jij waar Sien is? Wil jij mijn postbode zijn?
Post.
Wat staat er?
Ik wil met je praten, oma.
Nee, want jij vindt mij niet lief. Wat kan jij mooi schrijven, Simon?
Voorzien. Post.
De brievenbus.
Ik vind je wel lief, maar ik ben ook boos. Waarom heb je mijn haar geknipt?
Omdat ik...
Je mooi wou maken, zoals opa deed en dat je dan weer blij zou zijn.
Dat kan wel zo zijn, maar een kapper loopt nooit zomaar weg als een klant ontevreden is?
Sorry, oma. Zal ik ons haar iets mooi knippen?
Nou, eerlijk gezegd bel ik dan liever iemand met een echt knipdiploma.
Maar Sien kan wel goed haren wassen, oma.
Oh?
Ik zal het heel mooi doen, oma.
Ach. Hey!
Thank you. First I have to put this back. Well, we could have a whole day talking about this one. Let me try to, anyway, any question, any remark, if you're angry, you can also say that to me. Feel free. We're talking about quality here, and you understand now more, I hope, what I see as quality, what my experience is with quality, what my experience is with children, and why I say make it real, because here you can see the reality of Sien van Selling, who wants to help her grandmother, only good intentions, but she's 5. And then you make mistakes, then you do things that you don't know, you cannot do. And she experiences it, and she understands it, and she has to come to a conflict resolution. So if you talk about conflict resolution, here's an example. So the layer of conflict resolution that is inside this one, the beauty, family ties, everything is there in a not verbal way, everything in a visual way. Just a limited dialogue in this one, because basically also kids of this age don't talk much, they do a lot. Of course, what happened, I was in a festival in Sao Paulo, and there was a teacher that said, you should be in jail, because you promote kids to molest their grandparents. I hope that teacher will not teach longer, but also on the big international children's television festival, Prix Jeunesse, the BBC said that this should never be on television because you cannot touch someone that is asleep. And now children in the Netherlands don't dare to sleep anymore. Well, you know, we are number 2 on the most happy kids in the world. So I think the opposite might have happened. But so one of the things that we really have to change I think in our approach to children is that there's so much more stories inside them. So don't sit in your room to invent all kinds of stories. Go out there, work with them, and if you work every day with them, you get so many observations and elements for stories, because all the elements here are coming from the reality of my life, the life of my co-writer, and the life of my director. We both lived in the north, so we understand a little bit more of the mentality of the people there. All these elements are important. So when you create, you can use a lot of yourself, but don't be blind of the fact that you are not them. You're not them anymore. And the older you get, the more difficult it gets, so the more important it is to work with them every day, to talk with them. One of the things I often say when I'm asked to be one day as a kind of a consultant on a channel, that I say, well, if you cannot talk for an hour with a preschooler, don't work with preschoolers, please. Because talking is communication, is being on the same level. The same is what I said is if you go into making films or television with the idea that you can teach them something, it's the wrong attitude. You should step into it with the idea that they can learn as much from you as you can learn from them. Then you get to the core. Besides that, if you look at the pace of the editing, for instance, the moment that she's cutting the hair is the most. It's like a ritual, like a celebration. It gets all the space, and you can imagine every child of that age is on the edge of its seat because they know what she's doing should not be done, but they also feel that same conflict that scene has. That she has to do something. That makes it the deeper quality. That makes them connect with the character, that makes them understand the story and maybe adapt their experiences into their own lives, which is outcome, which might be impact. I have to go through some theories. Okay, so what I focus on in the films, in the television programs, is on the feelings, emotions, and sensations. Often we are going to the action. We're going to the verbalization. But it's this gesture with the hand to touch something. Seen who carefully takes the hair away. You see her fingers, her whole hand is talking to us. Somebody discovered that in all the films and things that I produce, that there's a lot of hands doing things. Yes, that's a great tool in language when you work for kids, or especially for younger kids. I will scroll a little bit through the presentation because I have a word for it. Because I started with visual storytelling, but at some moment I discovered that it's all about physical storytelling. Especially the younger they are. Use their movement, their gestures, their touching. That is also what connects, this is an expression that they have, but it's also what connects them with the audience that is watching. Physical storytelling. Because of the time, I will take you through the last thing, which is a short film, 15 minutes, 6 tips on how to become the best football player of the world, which is messy still, even after last night. But here we focused on physical storytelling. That's why we took football as a metaphor of life. I only can show you 2 scenes, not the whole movie because we don't have the time. But the story is about a girl who watches football in the coffee house of her Turkish father in the Netherlands, and the way the men react on the football. And she gets fascinated by football, and she discovers that she's very talented. But to be a girl with a dream of becoming a football professional is even harder than to be a boy. And that's what we show in this film. So in the next scene, we see Samiyet and her friend on a square in the city, and 2 other boys come and challenge them to play a match.
Tijdje?
Ze is een meisje.
Schouderduw. Ben je blind?
Ga ze maar met Barbie spelen. Hé, die winnen makkelijk.
organiseer een toernooi. Zaterdag. Ik ben scout. Weten jullie wat het is? Mag ik jullie namen?
Moussa Dirawi, Jaden Meerdik, Bas Müller.
We hebben ook een vrouwenteam.
Kijk eens, voor zaterdag.
Zaterdag?
Voor het feestje, slimmerik. Tadaa. Woehoe.
I cannot show the whole film, but what I want to add to this is, why does it work for kids to really engage with her? Is because this is really how they play football. It's not these beautiful shots of, it's really a fight, and especially for her. And she managed to get out of it in a very big way, you know, in a glorious way. She makes that goal. Imagine you're a girl watching that film, how much it does with you. But also what I use here is a lot of the cruelty that I mentioned before. The cruelty in the action, in the way they treat her, but also the cruelty in when she discovers Marta, the best woman football player ever from Brazil. Her father says, here's a dress. He's putting her back in her role as a girl. And since her father has, earlier in the movie, her father has shouted on television when he sees Cristiano Ronaldo make a dive, he says, football is not for girls. So she doesn't dare to tell her father that she loves football. And then he comes with a dress, cruel. And then we see her behind the fence in a jail. She cannot play, she cannot go to that scouting event on Saturday. It's like a jail. In the background, the boy is enjoying with the ball, cruel. Then the next shot is the cup that she will miss because she has to be in the dress on Saturday in a party. All these elements is on the level of that kids understand, feel, maybe subconscious, but this makes it strong for them. It gives a clear emphasis on it's like Dante's Inferno, you know, the story of Dante who wants to reach Beatrice, but he has to go through Inferno, to the hell, to climb up again and reach her. Well, this is what Samiet has to go through in this film, and we make it real, we make it true, and we use cruelty to make it really strong for her. So when she wins at the end, because I can tell you it has a happy ending, because we should never forget in whatever I say to you, whatever we do, that you need to build in a happiness factor. But everything is possible if you do it in the right way, but never forget the happiness factor. So every subject is possible to tackle. Last but not least, because of the time, and I want to open you to make some remarks, I did a one-day lecture at the University of Cinema in Buenos Aires, the city where I live part of my life. I'm pendling between Amsterdam and Buenos Aires. And after a one-day lecture, I asked them, what did you experience of all these films that I showed you? What do you think are important key issues in quality? And they came up with this list, the students. They say it needs a really good plot. Something that is at stake. Samiyet will not be happy in her life if she cannot play football. That deeply has to be there. The structure. It needs a very good structure. I come back to that. Where is it? Talking about structure. This is what Steven Spielberg said. They seem to have forgotten how to tell a story. Today's stories have no middle or end anymore. They usually have a beginning that doesn't stop beginning. Very good analysis. Jean-Luc Godard. Each film needs a beginning, a middle and an end, but not necessarily in that order. And he mixed all scenes and sounds, and some people call it art. But each children's film needs a beginning, a middle and an end, and necessarily in that order. Because kids need, and the younger they are, they need to have an overview. We want to surprise them, pull their leg, but that's awful for them. Because they are in a situation that their leg is pulled all the time. Their insecurity is increasing. So at least in the stories, give them the feeling that they're in control. Take care that the next scene you solve what happened in the previous scene. Don't wait until the end of the movie. You really have to think differently in dramaturgy when it's for children, especially when they're very young. Going back, this is what, talking about suffering, make your audience suffer as much as possible. That's what I try, of course, because Hitchcock said it. But I add to that, make your character suffer as much as possible, because that brings you really to the edge of your seat. That will be becoming a learning experience. And that's what kids really appreciate. And use the physical storytelling a lot. Coming back to the last slide that I was showing you, the one. Build in obstacles. I mean, some of them are really classic. I think the students just learn it at the film school. But it's important. They picked it out of the films that I showed them. To build in obstacles, like Samiyet has obstacles to overcome, like the birthday party, where she has to put on the dress to reach her goal. Identification, it's a classic one, but it means much more. We have to talk a whole day about it to understand what is identification. The character, or personality, as I also want to connect to that. The imagination, the hope. So you can make a story like 6 Tips, but if there's no hope at the end, you're destroying children. Representation, take care that I feel represented in that story. It's also has to do with identification. But representation, or it represents something bigger, something universal. So it's a story about a girl who wants to play football, but in fact it's a story about gender equality. Like a metaphor. The story is a metaphor. And take care when you have strong scenes that you have a comic relief. The moment that you laugh in Sien van Sellingen is because you have to get your comic relief after an intense scene that you watched. Imagine a child. Even stronger, because they can even stronger identify with Sien van Sellingen than you can. So this is what they told me, and I thought, yes, it's nice to share with you too, because these are very strong, important elements to define quality. And then this is my last little thing that I share with you before we open. I always make kind of a resume of how to judge a story or a film. The most important thing for me, these are the 3 W's. What is at stake? What is really, really has to change in the life of the main character to give that main character a new perspective? Sien van Sellingen, what is at stake? The relationship with the grandmother. Well, that's really bad for kids. It's really hurting them. To have a fight with your granny, that's impossible. Oh, we are here. We show it. We're deeply into it. So that is at stake. What is the message? What can the audience, what can kids take out of it? So besides, I mean, it doesn't mean that you have to be a moralistic filmmaker. But if you want to have outcome, if you want kids to take something out of it, there has to be kind of a message. There's a story that you want to tell beyond the story that you're telling. And why do I remember? Why is it a film? I see many films that I think, well, could be slides. Would be even more exciting. So why do I remember? Well, for instance, 6 tips, one of the things they remember is, of course, that thing that she does. The moment that you think she falls again, and she gets up in the most elegant way and hits the ball in the most perfect shot in the crossbar. And this is what Janusz Korczak also says. My greatest fault is that I'm no longer a child. Be aware of that when you work for kids and with kids. You're no longer a child. Don't try to be, but try to understand them and trust their autonomy. Thank you. I promise you some connection. You find me on Twitter, Facebook, whatever, even in Snapchat, but I guess not most of you are in Snapchat. But here are the links where you can watch some of the films that I wanted to show you, but at least 6 tips you can see there.
Thank you very much.
Welcome.
We still have 5 minutes. Imamo še 5 minut. Prosim, tukaj imamo mikrofon, da bojo lahko prevajalke v kabini slišale. Je pomembno, da sprašujemo v mikrofon. Beseda je vaša. Bi kdo želel kaj pokomentirati, vprašati?
Jan, can I do it in Slovene? Or?
Yes.
Okay.
And then in English?
Okay, I'll do it in English. Okay. You talk about the outcomes that are actually effects, yeah? And do you also measure the effects? Or, because we can see them in everyday life, that film has an effect on children, but do you also measure it? Or?
Yes, especially since I'm working in, that's one of the things that television basically is not doing. They are measuring the ratings. They do some quality research once in a while, but not specifically. But now I'm working for an NGO where the task is to create outcome and impact. So there's a whole system around it. Every action that we do, we measure. The great thing about my films is that, of course, the next day in the Netherlands you have the ratings in full detail. I can even see how a Catholic girl of 7 years old in the northern province, how she appreciated it, how she watched it. So it's really detailed. The direct, ratings. Ratings, don't underestimate them. They also, if you analyze them well, they also tell something. Besides that, most of my films have been shown on film festivals where I get reports from, are researched by institutions like ITZY, where I get reports from. I'm in many screenings with kids myself. I have a whole network of kids around me where I once in a while drop stuff and get reactions from. So yes, you can only be a professional in children's film if you understand them, and we're not children, so we have to do a lot of research. Which is something else I want to say. The difference of the approach of a commercial television is we're going to find a model and we're trying to research and we give exactly what that model needs so they go to the shop and buy. That's another approach. It's also a technique. Don't underestimate it as well. But use those techniques also for another approach. That's what I'm trying.
Sorry, thanks for a great lecture. How much you are individually involved in the whole process of production? I mean, work with the directors, screenwriters, and the other part of the team.
Well, when I worked in public TV, the difference with all the people that work in public TV is that I created the mission. I used my concept, I brought my concept to TV, and I was looking for people that I wanted to work with and who wanted to work within my frame. Many people said no. Many directors that are used to have the freedom, or I don't know what is freedom if there's no limit, but they didn't want to work with me because I had the final cut. It was my idea, or it was my story, or sometimes my script. I worked like a creative director, which is that I had to deliver 600 hours a year, so I couldn't be on the set all the time. But all the details I knew, all the cuts, I was in the edit room. I always finalized the cut. I did the final mix, so yes, I was very much involved. It was really teamwork with directors. And of course, teamwork with scriptwriters. Nowadays, I'm much more directing myself again, and I don't want anyone to interfere in my films. I just made a documentary in Argentina in complete freedom, so I know that that's why you have people had the choice. But in the Dutch public television context, you have different broadcast organizations that have to be different. So I created something that was different, and I took care that people contribute to that mission. And great filmmakers, like one of the best directors, he was already in his 70s when he did Sien van Sellingen. He never did something with such young children, but he saw what I was doing in film and on television, and when I asked him, he said, yes, I want to do it. And with that talent of him, also making comedy, for instance, there's a little bit of timing of comedy in Sien van Sellingen. That is, then 1 + 1 is 3. And I think, no matter what, if you work for kids, it is teamwork. Because it's a target group that we're not similar. It's not me communicating my life story to somebody of my age. It's really different. So it's a deep, deep profession that really needs good teamwork on all levels.
Še kakšno vprašanje morda? It seems that this is it. Thank you very much once again,
Yes.
Jan-Willem.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you for being with us.
My pleasure.